This is a magic scarf. If you wear it, you'll always be warm and safe, just like with your dear old Benjamin. Hey fellas and lovely viewers, it's Storm. Have you ever wanted to go into a haunted house and be faced with horrific creatures, puzzles, and cats? I didn't, but I'm sure I caught some of you guys' attention by mentioning cats, so we're going to talk about Stray Cat Crossing. Stray Cat Crossing is a pixel horror RPG by Yurlo and Jetpack Gone and published by Fridge. It came out in 2015. The music and art style are beautiful, very different from what we're used to seeing in these types of games. There's very little visible gore and almost no jump scares, but the gut punch you get at the end makes the story so worth it. So if you want to hear about how a game is probably the best representation of familial trauma in a world inspired of Pan's Labyrinth, The Nightmare Before Christmas, and Spirited Away, you're at the right place. Instead of what I usually do, which is summarize the game, then talk about the characters, then talk about the main themes and dissect them, I'll merge all three and weave the character and theme dissertation into the summary due to how the game plays out. It would be a disservice to it if I left them into separate categories. However, I will still add an important note and a final disclaimer. The themes of this game are familial trauma and bonds, death, PTSD, and survivor's guilt. No assault of any kind, but bad stuff will happen to characters in this game, including a pregnant woman. This is a horror game after all, and this is your final warning. Without further ado, let's get into it. You play as a young lady with bright red hair and a scarf around her neck. She comes across a young blonde girl wearing a green and white dress. The little girl is scared and wants to go home, so the protagonist walks her home. The little girl says she's cold, so she borrows the young woman's scarf. Now, sometimes green text will appear on the screen. I want to interpret these as the character's inner thoughts resurfacing, as nobody comments on these text boxes. Either they're only in the main character's head, or spoken directly to the player. The little girl introduces herself as Cat, as she's literally a stray cat crossing the street. So the protagonist leads little Cat home. Guys, I have no idea where to put this, so might as well do it now. But there are a lot of lampposts in the game, setting aside the Dragon Age Origins double entendre of lampposts with Alistair, if you know you know. But this made me think of the beginner's guide. The lamppost is an anchor. It's public lighting, so it's a beacon in the darkness. It can bring a sense of safety if you're walking home at night and need to see your surroundings. Or be ominous if it's the only thing around and it's the only one working in sight. In the beginner's guide, you reach a lamppost to connect to the narrator's friend Coda and finish a level or a setting. In Stray Cat Crossing, they sort of serve the same purpose. They light the way home for Cat, and also some rooms, as you will see that there are a lot in the game. During the intro credit scene, they have to step out of the way to avoid being hit by a car. They arrive at this huge manor, or is it a mansion? And Cat says it's her home, but our protagonist hasn't gotten their scarf back, so they follow after her only to be locked inside and having to follow the footsteps that lead to the basement. But beforehand, you meet a blind person holding a camera. They ask for a picture and may sometimes thank you or ask you to hold still. This precious little fella is our save mechanic. In my opinion, they're the cutest thing I've seen in the entire game. You can explore the other rooms, but not upstairs as you're blocked by a twig and shadowy figure, and you can find books by a certain Dr. Johann Faust. I will go on a tangent, but hey, this is my channel and I will always go on long tangents. And this one is necessary to understand the hope and psychology of some characters. Now, this name is derivative of Johann Georg Faust, also called Sabelicus Faustus or John Faustus. He was an alchemist of the German Renaissance, circa late 1400s, and was a conman and a magician, and also served as a heretic in these times. Several grimoires are also apparently written by him. His life and death are fascinating research topics, and I encourage you to dive into this rabbit hole when the video is over. But I will focus on what he was best known for. He quickly became the subject of many folk legends and the main character of a literary tradition, notably the best-known case of A Deal with the Devil. The best-known edition was also read by German polymath and creator of the Weimar Classicism, leading to both Romanticism and the Age of Enlightenment. Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. The Faustbuch des Christlich Meinenden tells the story of Johann Faust, son of a peasant who studies theology, medicine, astrology, and magical arts in Wittenberg. Because he wants knowledge, he conjures a demon who calls himself Mephistopheles and enters a pact of 24 years of service, during which he alternates between being a con artist, a party guy, a scholar, a wanderer, a traveler, and just lost and regretful over this whole pact, meeting and harming others directly or indirectly. When the 24 years are up, there is a great noise at midnight and the walls of his room are painted in blood and gore. His eyes are on the floor and his body is in the courtyard. Because of this, it is very important to remember that the Johann Faust in Stray Cat Crossing is a conman and someone who promises greatness but never delivers, until the consequences show up at his door, which they sadly never do in this game. The protagonist enters a basement with bold red lights and a set of two peculiar characters and a dog. The two characters are tall and short, both baby-like with ever-changing faces and rhyming sentences, always finishing one another's words. Cat asks to leave, and they want a favor from her before she can leave. Every riddle from these two need an extract from a flower in the garden, but we will come back to that. They ask for the name of the dog, and after melting an ice swan sculpture, you play a movie which reveals the name of the dog, which is Faust. Why a dog? Because the dog is a mutt, and ill-bred was an insult in ye olden days, and being a conman, Johann Faust is as focused on making money regardless of consequences and whoever he lies to as a dog is focused on a bone, or primal instincts. Humans should have enough of a moral compass to know what they're doing is wrong. A dog is a common insult for someone who is less than human, or does not know how to behave like one. A walking baby also gives you a cracked egg. The egg is a symbol of fertility, as it is literally where the young of species that lay eggs can grow outside of a parent's body. A cracked egg could mean that you're making an omelette, but in that case it's not fertilized. Or it means that it was an accident or an animal attacking the protective shell. Either way, what was growing inside is now dead. The next thing they ask for is the favorite meal of the ram, and it's the edgiest shit as ever, as it is human hearts. The ram is a motif that we will see more of later in the video, so I will develop my thoughts then. But obviously, something has to be dead for a predator to eat their heart, and the fact that the hearts are conjoined do represent the twins. It might not mean that the twins are conjoined, and frankly, the freak show horror of conjoined twins is such a tired trope that it should be retired already. It just means that the two of them, that duo, is seen as one and only entity by the protagonist or cat, just like the duo you talk to as you enter the basement. Finally, they ask for the perfect song with a perfect voice. The protagonist revives a bird and teaches it to sing the perfect tune. Once it has sung its song, it is killed again by the shorter one in the duo who says that dead things should stay dead. Well, he's not wrong. The protagonist asks to leave again, only to be face to face with a fetus hanging from the ceiling and a baby running after her until she escapes the basement. However, despite them saying that it's her fault, she didn't give them a chance to live. They beg the protagonist not to forget them. As she leaves the basement, she comes face to face with Cat, who says that since her mother and Benny were expecting the twins, they didn't need her anymore, so she left, and they all died, and she killed them all. The basement itself, as you have understood, is home of the twin brothers that Cat should have had but passed away. At this stage in the game, we only suppose that Cat had a role to play in their death. The massive amount of baby and fetal imagery and the phrase "we never got a chance to live" means that they died as unborn kids. The hallways are also red and shiny, which could look like the inside of a person's body, their guts, or their womb in the case of the twins. The only room which is not red is the room with the cribs, the ram skull, and the dead bird, because everything is dead in there, so it would make sense that the gut or the womb you're in is also discolored. The person hosting you is dead, and you are too. Now let's throw some bullshit out the window before we get into the thick of it. Despite a lot of the characters and world's text and subtext could be read through an anti-abortion, so anti-bodily autonomy for the parent point of view, that is obviously not the case. The reason why is that they had cribs, and later in the game we see that they had fully furnished rooms and planned names. Unless it was absolutely necessary to save the life of a parent, in the case of a dead fetus rotting in the parent's body, for example. Nobody would put that much effort into preparing their life to welcome two new kids only to change their minds so soon before they are born. According to literally every account of a person ever getting this procedure, it hurts emotionally and physically. You don't just waltz in a clinic and it's done in 15 minutes. The representation of the twins also show babies that are close to being born as opposed to the tiny shrimp-sized clump of cells extracted during an abortion procedure. Plus, Cat is an only child, and the sentence is "you didn't get us a chance to live." Second person pronoun addressing that character. Think about it. The implications would be morbid, disgusting, and horrifying. This is not what this game is about. Back to the dead twins, which is the start of a sentence I never thought I would say out loud. The reason why their appearance is constantly changing and is so different is because they were not born. So nobody knows what they would have looked like, but they stay babyish as Cat has only seen them in ultrasound screenings. And they would be vaguely baby-shaped by then. I do not know why they're all in dapper clothing, but I want to believe that it was just the fashion sense of the house. As Cat is also dressed in fashion that could be read as old-timey, they even have old textbooks and old bikes around, and the film projector looks retro. This is probably to showcase that these are old memories that Cat is digging up. Old dusty things pair well with that sentiment. Now we can find some more books lying around, and I love symbolism, so let's quickly look around before we go on. Emily Dickinson was a poet of the 19th century and a transcendentalist, which is a subcategory of Romanticism which, as said earlier, is descended from the philosophies of The Sorrows of Young Werther by Goethe. Also, if my Romanticism literature teacher is watching, hey Sarah, I don't want to give out your last name even if it fucks severely. I'm also not going to talk about all aspects of Dickinson's work, but those that are most relevant to the themes of the game are her penchant for talking about mortality and morbidity, but also Flowers and Gardens, which we will talk about in the next section. There is also a book on Marxist theories of the character mask and reflectionism. This can be taken literally as the twins change faces and there is a character in the third act that wears a mask. But it also relates to the classic Greek concept of mimesis, or the Roman concept of the persona. Wrong game, but you got the spirit. The concept has been used to interpret how people relate in societies with a complex division of labor, putting on a figurative mask and playing a role in the rat race. This is most often seen in neurodivergent people, where the term masking is used to indicate someone trying to pass in neurotypical society. This is not to say that characters are or are not neurodivergent, I'll leave that to the creators in fanfiction, but just to indicate that social roles are important in this game, but we will talk more about it with the character of Benjamin. There's also a book called Desire and Envy. I could not find anything about it, but I will suppose that this is about the twins' feelings towards Cat and life. They desire to be alive and envy that Cat still is. Anyways, our protagonist was teleported to the entrance of the house and stubborn as ever to get that scarf back, she goes back inside. This time, Cat's footsteps lead us back to the backyard, the garden, peaceful and green and welcoming. It's a very dreamlike area and could make us think of most depictions of fairy tales or even Alice in Wonderland. There, by telling time to an owl, you can determine where you go using the clock hands as a bridge. In the center, a caterpillar with a no theater mask greets the protagonist and offers her to put on the kettle for some tea, and mentions that she's worried about her baby. The mask in question is the ko-omote, used to represent a young woman. It was used for a variety of characters, including deities or spirits that are women. I also choose to believe that she looks like Ko the Face Stealer from The Last Airbender, which is one of the oldest and most knowledgeable spirits, but also an immoral entity. Well, he literally steals faces of those who show the slightest bit of emotion in front of him. Well, there could be an argument to be made about abusive parents that taunt their kids and punish them for showing any kind of emotion. I believe that the similar appearance is more of an homage than anything symbolic, as the Caterpillar Lady, as I'm going to call her from now on, truly seems worried about her child and treats the protagonist with kindness, and gives orders with a motherly tone when she asks of the player to retrieve her child and bring him back. She mentions that she hasn't seen Cat, the little girl, since the accident. The plot thickens. Her child was taken by the spider. Her being worried makes sense. Arachnids do eat other insects, and yeah, caterpillars are insects. Going north, there is the entrance to a maze which we cannot enter as a ram minotaur kid is blocking the entrance. Going east, the protagonist hears a cry for help. It's the Caterpillades kid stuck in a web. We have little time before he's fully engulfed in a cocoon and becomes a spider's post-workout protein shake. Unfortunately, the protagonist isn't quick enough and the spider arrives, which is actually 4 conjoined wolves, each with the name of a season, who cannot get along. The wolves admit that they were conjoined by someone called the Sphinx and they want to eat both the grub and the protagonist, but she offers to ask for a cure to separate them and goes off to find the Sphinx. As she leaves, the Caterpillade starts wrapping herself in a cocoon, muttering about her waiting around all day for the father to come home. My favorite character, the Sphinx, or second favorite character because I do like the photographer as well. Anyway, she lives in a traditional Japanese home. She is another minotaur with the head of a ram and the body of a woman. She also just calls herself the woman and not the Sphinx. Now, with the ram skull and the ram sphinx, we know that representations of the devil often include goat or ram elements, but this is not why these characters are pictured as these animals. We'll see that in the next room. The woman / the Sphinx said that she cannot honor the request, because the wolves must pay for what they have done. She won't say what the crime of the wolves is, but she asks for a red larva in exchange for the wolves' quadrisection. A sphinx is a creature from Egyptian mythology symbolizing the union of the god of the sun Ra with a lion's body, and of a pharaoh with a human head. They were a symbol of duality, force and fierceness, but also intelligence, prudence and reflection. It is the representation of a powerful sovereign who acts reasonably, similar to a mother being the head of a family, as they were often the unsung managers of a household in a society that adheres to ideas of the patriarchy. Her and her child's appearance, an animal head on top of a human body, do mirror the Minotaur, which was a bastard creature half-human, half-ox of Greek mythology, but also mirror what a lot of Egyptian deities looked like, implying another form of unlimited power. The Sphinx also exists in Greek mythology, and when represented by a woman, was called a sphinx before sphinx became the neutral term used by modern Hellenists. The Greek form has wings too, and is mostly known for the myth of Oedipus, who solved its riddles to liberate the city of Thebes. I tried looking up Japanese sphinxes, but nothing came up. I believe that there might be a yokai or a yurei that act similarly though, as every single mythology has a half-animal Riddler, but still I couldn't find anything about it. The maze is haunted by a ghost that takes the shape of a woman. When coming into contact with it, she just says, "You shouldn't," and brings the protagonist back to the start. Now let me put on my tinfoil hat. I believe that this is a representation of parental lore. Your family, what they have lived through, how your parents feel, etc. But they don't want you to know. They don't want you to be burdened with what you have lived through. Trauma is cyclical, no matter if you talk about it or not. It's a hard balance to find. Maybe this is just projection, as my creator Rainer was never told anything when growing up. But with all the memes about discovering your family's lore, I will believe that this was a shared experience. The maze is trying to figure out the truth, and the ghost is your parents seeing what you're doing, and they sweep everything under the rug. But the protagonist is smart and figures out the password. It wasn't really hard, TBH, I just suck at riddles. And I disagree. Everyone has someone who gave birth to them, a progenitor, but not everybody has a mother. That is a title that has to be earned. You can be a woman and have a kid, but only the kid will be able to judge if you were their mother, their bully, or their abuser. Although the two final words could be synonyms. Hard pill to swallow, I know, but if you're interested in the topic, here's a channel I enjoy. Tangent aside, after a short puzzle, you find the red larva who immediately trusts the protagonist. It is shown that sheltered children who know nothing about the dangers of the world are more at risk of harm and abuse. I will also use this to say that children are some of the most vulnerable people, and the general public doesn't realize it. Because he is so innocent, you do not want to believe that something bad will happen to him. But deep down in your heart, You know. You know. Regardless, the Sphinx who abandoned her heart long ago, direct quote, gives the protagonist a parchment that will separate the wolves. We also notice that the caterpillar lady is in a cocoon. War, famine, pestilence, death. The 4 horsemen shall pull you apart and set you free unto the fate you deserve. This character means a cart pulled by 4 horses, but can also be used in the context of one must keep one's word, according to Zedek. The wolves now have to deal with the consequences of their actions, but instead of being 4 wolves conjoined, they are 4 halves of a wolf. And I will insist on the fact that I thought at first that this was kanji, but the only definitions I could find were in Chinese. Thank you, Reigns Rumi, who speaks a little Mandarin. I do not think the developers wanted to add an element of Chinese mythos to the game. I just think that the devs thought it was quote-unquote Japanese enough to add to this section of the game, and that players wouldn't know better. The garden is Japanese-inspired, and I do not know why. The game does not take place in Japan, given the fact that everyone has Western names, and the manor architecture is not a style seen in rural Japan, so instead I turned my attention towards Zen gardens. They were, at first, found around temples, shrines, and castles. Taking care of Zen gardens is an important and respected art form. They wish to interpret and idealize nature by limiting its spread, so there is a spiritual aspect to them on top of the artistic and botanic aspects of it all. So we can also link it to more biblical texts, notably the Garden of Eden, which was, in the Christian mythos, where God places its first creations before the first sin. Okay, but what does this all mean? The garden is literally a clock. The symbolism can't be less subtle. The garden, just like the seasons, the clock, and the circle of life, is cyclical. It blooms in spring, thrives in summer, wilts in autumn, and dies in winter. And the cycle starts anew next year. It's the same for organic beings. You are born, you grow up, you grow old, and you die. Nature will regrow after disasters like the 4 horsemen, but disasters will happen. The clock will keep ticking, and life will find a way again. And again. And again. The garden is also the one area that deals the most with familial trauma and the horror of being a parent, especially a mother. The figure of the woman, nurturing and motherly, and the Sphinx or the witch, seductive and deadly, are both intertwined into how most societies view women, even today sadly. But they are also shown as powerful creatures, yet insects. In a lot of insect colonies, the queen is the one that leads the workers and lays the most eggs. Bees, ants, wasps. I know it happens, and if parents are watching, I hope that none of you have known or will know the tragedy that is losing a child. The Sphinx says that the wolves should pay for what they have done, and I believe that her child is dead, as the smaller ram just evaporates when given the password. The caterpillar lady is worried about her child, but given that she leaves her cocoon, it is unknown if the grub ever sees her again. Even the red larva gets eaten without being able to go home. Calling back to the previous section with the rams that love to eat human hearts, to a child's mind, this could be what it is like to be pregnant. What do you mean you have one or more beings inside of you? The only way to have something enter your system is by consumption. If you do not know them, excuse the expression, inner workings of mammalian reproduction. A book you can find is Before Eden by Arthur C. Clarke, published in 1961, and speculates about what Venus would be like, entirely on observations from Earth. Now we know that planet Venus is a hellscape with our modern technology. But in 1961, Clarke imagined a consequence of interplanetary contamination with a colony of plants. The explorers collect samples and photographs and speculate about it, but after the explorers leave, the plant organism absorbs organic material from the trash left behind by the explorers. Earth bacteria and viruses start killing it. Beneath the clouds of Venus, the story of creation was ended. To understand the twins and fulfill their favors, you needed some extract from the flowers in the garden. They literally take away from the garden's life force to sustain themselves in their games, which is a very poetic way of showcasing the horrors of pregnancy and the toll it can take on one's body. Admittedly, it is not the twins that led to the mother's demise, although not directly, but they were involved somehow. The mother was also involved in the twins' demise, although not directly either. We can notice a dead child floating in the moon face pool, and while the moon has always been associated with women, and the face looks like the Ko-Omote, we can see it as an abstract representation that the twins died unborn as the mother died too. The Sphinx, in her insectoid form, asks our protagonist if she is Cat. No matter what we answer, she says that we are not Cat, as Cat would not abandon them as such, saying that they all love her so much even if she looks a little different. However, meeting up with Cat in the hallway, it is revealed that our protagonist is Cat. Either way, they have the same name or are one and the same person. It's very apparent that the correct theory is the latter. So Cat unlocks the door to go back inside with a key found in the cocoon. She gets teleported outside and runs back inside to the attic. You can now visit all the rooms upstairs, and we start with the children's room. You find a doll that looks like the twins downstairs, which may be where Cat imagined the twins to be like. And the taller twin could be her imagining what it would look like if toys could grow up. You also see the aforementioned crib, wooden blocks that spell Mom and Dad, and in the bookshelf there is Le Petit Prince by a French man with a fancy name, which is Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. I was actually required to read this book in school in 5th grade. I liked it, but didn't really understand it at the time, and also didn't know that it was first published posthumously in the States in French and English, before being published in France following the fall of the fucking Régime de Vichy, and is the second most sold and translated book in the world. I'm sure you can guess the first one and all the harm it caused. The Little Prince is about a military pilot that crashes in the Sahara and meets a young prince from planet B612. He's visiting various other planets, including Earth, and the story reflects on loneliness, friendship, love, discrimination, and loss. A question we may ask is, why did the parents have separate beds? I guess we'll never know. They could be very religious, which doesn't seem to be the case. They could be having some issues in their relationship, which is more likely. Or maybe they just have very incompatible sleeping habits, but not so incompatible that they fully have to sleep in separate bedrooms. It is never fully explained, but as I said, the second option is the most likely. She enters a church with coffins lining the sides of the central alley. She comes face to face with a man, grey as a corpse, wearing fancy red and black clothing and a mask. His mask does move, but he only speaks through a voice that seems to be emanating from the void around them, echoing through the church. Or would it be a temple? The organ in the soundtrack does make it sound like a church, which is used as a venue for funeral ceremonies. In this case, you will have a lot of mourning to do with the sheer number of coffins inside. The masked man gives her back her scarf and hears words she has probably already heard somewhere else. This is a magical scarf. If you wear it, you'll always be warm and safe, just like with your dear old Benjamin. So we can suppose that this person represents Benjamin, and this is how I will be referring to him from now on. I told you we would be coming back to the masks, and we will be coming back to his. According to ensacademic.com, the concept of character masks refer to the circumstance that in human societies, people can take on functions in which they act out roles, voluntarily chosen, by necessity, or forced. In these roles, some or all of their true characteristics and intentions may be partly or wholly masked, so that they appear different from what they truly are. The public face and the private thoughts, interests, and emotions diverge. Also, their activity may have broader social effects that they would rather not know about, which they wish to be unknown or presented in a certain light, or which they're unaware of, and therefore the effects are usually mentally disconnected from the real causes. People in their relationship may no longer be quite what they seem to be, and there is a difference between their personal and formal relationships. Even if the masking is readily observable and known, so that the difference between the person and the functional role is self-evident, what the true character is may remain unknown. This can represent Benjamin's place in the family and at work, and his struggle to balance the two and show his true emotions, but also his loss of identity. We don't know his job, so he doesn't want it to be the only thing defining his life. He doesn't want people to call him Dad, as there are thousands of dads in the world, but only one Ben for one cat. It is also the reason why the attic is a theater, as masks have not only been used in rituals, but also in theater since the art was created, and the oldest theater masks were found in ancient Greece. Because of the name thing, I thought he was Cat's stepfather, but no, he is her father. He begs Cat to remember and disappears. The name on the coffins are Kendall, Sebastian, Milton, Benjamin, Rose, Crystal, Penny, Sydney, Logan, and Riley. All of these have an importance later down the line, and we will talk about them in due time. I will just start by talking about Penny, Rose, and Crystal, as these are the coffins you need to open to get items for the next part of the story: a coin, a rose, and a crystal swan sculpture. I have a theory that one of these is also her mother's name, and I think it's Rose. It was the only item that was written in red, and in the garden the Sphinx also had some red text, and as we know, the Sphinx and the caterpillar lady both represent Cat's mother. The Sphinx also, quote, can't stand roses, perhaps as a reminder of her past. I will not call her Rose from now on, but this is something to keep in mind. Cat leaves the church and arrives in a theater lobby. She discovers that the blind photographer has a dog now. He doesn't like her very much and growls when she approaches. She also sees one of the twins from downstairs who asks to have the crystal swan as the last one got destroyed, I wonder by who, and he gives Cat a key. The play starts, and possibly Benjamin, as the director, is mad at Cat as she's on in 5 minutes and not ready. I will also say that I love the theater presentation of the backstory, even though it is very repetitive and very cyclical. This story takes place 20 years ago when Cat was 5 years old, so she must be 25 now. The first time you go on stage, you'll listen to the mother's favorite story about a mother and her baby ram, which is why the Sphinx and her son are rams. One day, a pack of wolves came and ate her child. Another reason why I believe that the ram son is dead. It is said explicitly in this story. The ram mother was sad but relieved, so this leads me to conclude that Cat's mother was at least a little resenting towards her kids, or at least her family life, and that she desires to be free even through tragedy. Foreshadowing. During the intermission, you learn the existence of a character called the Toy Maker, which is another Benjamin, but this time with a sad mask. The blocks behind him spell Bad Cat, and the dollhouse looks like the actual house. The key opens the door in the ticket booth, which leads to a long hallway with a grandfather clock at the end, surrounded in crystal or ice swans. Why swans? Why ice or crystal? Ice and crystal are very fragile sculpting materials, which could indicate the fragility of human life. Swans in literature often represent love and fidelity because they are monogamous animals. However, I will also add in familial and platonic love to this definition, as affection comes in many different forms. The fact that they're in a room with a clock can indicate that memories will erode and wilt away eventually, despite how powerful their bond is, if the clock stays broken, if time stays frozen. The clock has been broken for 15 years and is missing a gear. The tragedy that befell this family happened 15 years ago, and when Cat remembers, the clock will be fixed. So back to the start. A little time rewind where she needs to collect items again. Just adding this now, but the fact that coins are in a coffin could indicate financial issues for Cat's family when they were still around. The second time Cat goes on stage, she refuses to hear a bedtime story. This is where Benjamin comes in and gives Cat her present, her beloved scarf. If she refuses the scarf, Benjamin offers to prepare the room for the twins, and he and the mother start arguing about the names. They could either be Logan and Riley, or Kendall and Sydney. All 4 names can be found on coffins. The parents say that when the twins are here, there might not be any more room for Cat. It is unknown if it is really what was said or if Cat is projecting, but I believe that it was projection. There is also an inconsistency with the timeline. The twins, the tragedy, everything should happen in the span of a year to coincide with a normal human pregnancy. But during the play, they say it was 20 years ago and the clock broke on the time of the tragedy, but 15 years ago. I will say that the timeline isn't that important, as it only changes if Cat is 20 or 25. My theory is that the first play, where Cat listens to the bedtime story and gets a scarf, was 20 years ago. All subsequent plays and scenes happened 15 years ago, including the one when Benjamin brings a gift. She refuses it, and he talks to her mother about the twins, meaning that she would be 10 when these scenes happen. New time loop. When Cat gets 3 coins, she grabs some popcorn. In the actor's lounge, you give an egg to the ram actress and popcorn to the baby cat actress. She gives you a wood block. You start at 2. Someone asks Cat if she is excited to have little brothers, and no matter what she replies, the narrator says it's only normal. Go ahead and tell everyone. The adults argue behind the door, saying that it might be hard to stay when the twins are here and everything will be wonderful when they move. Benjamin says it's always summer in the city. Oh god, that sounds like a nightmare. And yeah, if it's sunny and there are no trees around, it's always summer. All Cat thinks about is that she will have to say goodbye to the seasons in the garden. Benjamin calls this house a memory, and to some extent, yes. The parents fight, saying that the mother likes it here and calls him selfish. A narrator calls either Benjamin or Cat selfish. They hear the door slam and wonder where is Cat. She ran away, annoyed at all the fighting in the house. Nobody knows what happened next, as they lost the script. There's not a ton of interpretation to do here, the story is practically playing on screen. Eventually, the rest of the script is found by giving the woodblock toy to the child ram and giving it back to the actor. All this fighting. Ever since we heard the twins were coming, Mommy and Benny fought a lot. They only talked about the twins, or when to move away, or Mommy's illness. It makes Cat very sad. Mommy stopped reading to me at bedtime, and Cat decides to run away. Act 3 of the play is a flashback where a young Cat meets the blind photographer and teaches him to take clear, as opposed to blurry, pictures. He tells her that Johann Faust can help him see, but right now Sebastian the dog is helping him see. His eyes got burnt up. We do not know how. Cat says that her mom is also seeing Johann Faust for a mysterious illness, and she doesn't know what, but my theory is that he's her gynecologist and he's checking out for the twins, as to a child's mind they could be an illness. Benjamin is driving too fast. The photographer is looking for a cat. The picture is blurry because he keeps moving. Cat tells him to hold still. She confesses that she ran away from home, and he tells her that they could be looking for her. Cat sees another cat crossing the street and decides to go pet it, thinking that she can bring it home. The photographer warns her of a car incoming. The car swerves at the last second. Nobody survives. One of the baby actors give Cat a gear to repair the clock. Benjamin says that it wasn't Cat's fault. After working through her deep-rooted trauma and giving her younger self a stern but soft talking to, she realizes that nobody hates her. The lines Cat uses are the lines in green shown all throughout the game. But yeah, nobody hates her. Not Ben, not Mom, not the twins, not the guy with the camera, nor the dog. As long as they're not forgotten, they will forgive her. As she leaves, the photographer says that the house is only a memory and they need to leave. It's fading. As she runs down, she sees hallucinations of a potentially happier future for her and her family. Her parents bringing the twins home, the twins running around the kitchen as her mother cooks, a movie night with both of her parents. The photographer makes Cat promise not to forget him. She promises but can't remember his name. She leaves the garden as the house fades. The photographer's name is Milton. It's the only coffin that isn't linked to an item or person in the church, so by process of elimination, we know that his name is Milton. As the credits play and Cat runs away, she eventually finds herself face to face with the still burning vehicle that killed everyone. Fire is often seen as a cleansing form of execution, and as I have said in previous videos, the image of the witch is one that is well anchored in our society today, even if very few were burned. Or the fire at the end of the picture of Dorian Gray. The fires of hell are thought to purify sins. Yet fire is one of the most dangerous elements that exist in our world. But the ending has nothing religious linked to it. It is a girl who comes face to face with the consequences of her actions, of Benjamin's actions, and of everyone's actions. But why the attic, the garden, and the basement? Because these are the most mysterious places of a house. If you live somewhere with either of these rooms, or all three, were you never afraid of the dark basement at night? Or the spider-infested attic? Or the garden looking into the woods, into the dark sea of trees that stares back into your soul. These are where most secrets are hidden, treasures in boxes and crates buried deep underground. These are also the 3 best places to hide a body. The garden is obvious, both with lime and plastic bags you could hide a body in the less visited rooms of a house. The more private areas where guests never go. We do talk about skeletons in the closet, but this is the same principle, just not in the closet. A living space is an extension of ourselves, and this tragedy that befell Cat's family is the consequence of someone feeling like a stranger in their own home. Let me conclude by saying that my theory is, well, I think that this entire game is either exposure therapy or hallucinogen therapy for a now adult cat. Think about it. It's been 15 years, but given the state of psychiatric care in the world, maybe she could only try to get better now. Perhaps Dr. Faust is just the name of a doctor her mom used to see, and Milton's had the same name. Cat locked away those traumatic memories. Maybe she doesn't even realize that she did it. Repressing memories is just a trauma response. Your brain can just do that. Perhaps she finally is with someone who will be able to help her deal with the pain and guilt and grief she must have felt for so long, after suffering such an event and so many losses. Slowly, perhaps helped by her therapist or on her own, she visits the part of her memory that she forgot and is trying to face again. And despite the few glitched-in videos, she is doing well. The path to recovery is still long, but we play it through a journey of rekindling, pardon the pun, with the love, affection, and trust she once felt with her family and the people she met, even if they are now long gone. I'm so happy I live in a timeline when I can experience these masterpieces. I think Stray Cat Crossing is one of the only games I've played where they make these topics the core subject and manage to handle it with as much grace and tact as they did. I wanted to know if the creators made anything else, and one of them did make Cloudkeeper Shrine of Dal, which is a bullet hell RPG inspired of Korean folklore. If Stray Cat Crossing is anything to go by, I'm sure it's good too, and it's scheduled to come out in August. I really enjoyed Stray Cat Crossing, and please, if you have more games like this, recommend them in the comments. I'm always looking for more games to play. Also, I don't know if you've noticed, but I am now animated. My PNG tuber was made by my creator. My VTuber model is rigged and animated by my good friend Iska. Go watch her videos, she's awesome. But I sadly do not have a webcam yet, so that will be for another video. As always guys, I never know how to conclude videos. Have you played Stray Cat Crossing before? What are your thoughts and theories? Did I miss a detail? Leave a comment to let me know. And while you're here, like, subscribe, hype, and boost the video, share it with your friends. You know how all of this works. And I will see you all around the internet, fellas. Have the loveliest of lovely days.